Hello and welcome. My name is Edward Tan and I am part of the Capital Introduction team at StoneX, formerly known as INTLFC Stone. For those of you who don't know, StoneX is a global financial services firm dedicated to connecting clients to the global markets ecosystem through institutional-grade platforms, end-to-end clearing and execution, and high-touch expertise. At StoneX, we pride ourselves in providing an exceptionally high level of client service and best-in-class products and services to investment managers globally across all asset classes. Today, it is with great pleasure that we host a discussion with a panel of champions for social impact, diversity, and inclusion. Moderating the discussion will be Paul Magahis, Managing Director and Co-Head of Capital Introduction at StoneX. As for our panelists, joining us are Grace Reyes, CEO and founder of the Investment Diversity Exchange, Bahiyah Robinson, CEO and founder of VC Include, Fernando Vinzons, Director of Investments at the Cook County Annuity and Benefit Fund, and last but not least, former New York Knicks shooting guard, Allan Houston, the founder of the Allan Houston Legacy Foundation and the FISLL Project, which serves as the social impact arm of the foundation. And without further ado, Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I just want to thank our panelists for taking their time to just chat with us today about a very important topic, social impact and diversity and inclusion. I know personally it's dear and near to your hearts as it is mine. Each of you I consider close friends and family, and you serve as an inspiration to me in my daily life. But as we start today, perhaps you guys could just talk a little bit about yourself, your company, and your mission. Bahiyah, ladies first. Why don't we start with Bahiyah?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Paul, Ed, and the StoneX team for inviting me. I'm Bahiyah Yasmeen Robinson, CEO and founder of VC Include. I started working with fund managers and focused on diverse emerging managers in the alternative investments asset class, specifically impact investors and venture capitalists. And what I was finding was when I was working with emerging managers in those two asset classes, there were very few, if no, diverse managers. So we're talking about Black, Latinx, LGBTQIA, and women-led funds. And I was seeing this juggernaut in the asset allocator to asset manager layer. And, as a champion for companies, diverse companies, I knew that connecting and engaging diverse asset managers in impact and innovation and building a platform for allocators as well was going to drive long-term growth over the next 10 to 20 years. And so that was the impetus for VC Include. And now 3 to 4 years later, we've worked with over 125 managers in those asset classes. And we're really focused on ESG, impact, positive social impact, and diversity for best-in-class managers.
Thank you, Bahiyah. Appreciate it. Grace?
Hi, I'm Grace Reyes, CEO of the Investment Diversity Exchange, which was launched this year. Didn't know COVID was going to happen, and so completely disrupted our business plans. But nevertheless, we were able to host an amazing conference last week, which features the movers and shakers in the industry and very influential institutional investors. And for us, diversity and inclusion means it's inclusive of all ethnic groups. So right now there are a lot of industry organizations and groups that represent different voices, different ethnic groups. But for us, we feel like there needed to be a united front. And so we decided to create the Investment Diversity Exchange to promote diversity in general.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you for inviting me last week. I really had an amazing time, just being a part of your 3-day conference. I think there was over 400 folks virtually, and the quality of the panelists, the folks attending was by far one of the best that I've attended this year. So thank you again for that. Fernando.
Thanks for having me. Fernando Vinzons, Director of Investments at the Cook County Pension Fund. The Cook County Pension Fund is an $11.5 billion pension fund that represents about 35,000 Cook County employees. And Cook County is Chicago and the outlying suburbs and cities. And these are people who serve as sheriffs, county corrections officers, public health and hospital employees. So you can imagine we represent a very diverse base here in Chicago, because Chicago itself is a very diverse city. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to us? To us, as a pension fund, it's really trying to have the assets managed by, it won't mirror the constituent base, but try to get as many emerging managers into the fund managing the assets. So we've had a very long history of investing with emerging manager, dating back to the maybe late 80s. When I started 10 years ago, we had probably less than maybe 12% exposure to emerging managers, and now we're close to over 30%. We have well over $1 billion with emerging managers and diverse managers. So, and Illinois is a very active state in terms of exposure to emerging managers. We'll go into it a little bit later on. So,
okay, thank you, Fernando. Appreciate that. And Allan, last but not least, I know we had that charity poker event last year, which was amazing. Thank you for letting us be a part of it. I know some of the executives in our firm, Charles Lyon and Jake Rappaport, were very big in D&I, diversity and inclusion. And I think Charles is still asking when his private shooting lesson is. So we got to arrange that.
Thank you so much for including me in this panel. I'm looking forward to learning a lot. FISLL is an acronym for faith, integrity, sacrifice, leadership, and legacy. And FISLL was something that my father and I founded years ago, and we decided to brand it. And the reason FISLL became so valuable to me is because when you learn about life and everyone on this panel, everyone listening and watching is a performer. And we're trying to just be our best, live our best, perform our best, and make the most impact as possible. And so FISLL is a way that we've kind of designed a social impact brand and approach for helping individuals, corporations, groups really define their values, define the value system, and really objectify them and make them tangible and experiential. And I think that's what's so important now. So many people want to have an impact. They want to understand how to do that. But you have to understand yourself first. You have to understand who you are so you can impact others. And that's really what we do. We provide tools, resources, workshops, and we just work with people to really identify what these things are. So when I think of diversity, I think of diversity of thought and experience first. I don't think of it as the physical groupings that socially construct diversity. I think of how we all think differently, how we have different experiences, and then how can we be inclusive in that? Let's collect them, but let's also align ourselves with a core value system. And so those things kind of come together. And I think the most rewarding thing for us is that we're working directly with young adults, young leaders, people who are influencing our youth, our coaches, our parents, our teachers, those cultural influencers. And we're helping them find their leadership capacity and role so that they understand that on both sides, on the younger side where they're impacting youth, but on the other side where they still need mentoring and leadership too from people who are on this discussion, this panel, is really where we find a lot. And so we have merchandise that we're aligning things with that we can discuss later, but it's just appreciative of having this discussion.
Sure. Thank you, Allan. Actually, since we have you, why don't we expand a little bit upon your FISLL project and the acronym of faith, integrity, sacrifice, leadership, and legacy. Why don't we expand on that right now?
Well, I'm a father of 7. My wife and I have going on 24 years. And the one thing that by the grace of God, I'll just say that, my perspective and my lens through which I see my life has been something that's passed down to me and my wife. And we just want to pass that on. our young people are so valuable and precious. And, you know, when I talk to a lot of people, leaders and fathers and mothers and parents, they're like, well, what kind of world do we want our children to actually see and continue to grow up in? And it's up to us to kind of help shape culture in that way. So I found that you got to influence and train the influencer, right? And I think that's the most valuable thing that we're finding is the people who are working with young people who are influencing them. We all need that group. They need that accountability. We need that group. So you have to have a model with which that works and a framework. And so whether it's working with the Chicago public school system, as we work with developing leadership programs, mentoring initiatives with the Stanford public school system. And so what happens is you have this heartbeat of society, which is, excuse me, the schools and the communities and the homes. And we want to just make sure that the people who are helping those young people are resourced, they're competent, they have support groups, you know, trauma care. But at the end of the day, it's really about how are you aligned with your purpose? You know, you ask the question, how am I striving towards who I really want to become, and how am I matching that with who I'm designed to become? And so when you do that, then you can kind of help other people do the same. So the FISLL project is our way that we install these programs, these systems, these values, this framework. So that's like in basketball, you have a system of play. You have terminology. You know, you have what are you trying to accomplish to win. And I think a lot of leaders find that valuable, especially when you're working with young people, when you're working in the community. You find some desired outcomes, some measurable, some performance metrics to say, you know what, I'm helping my own personal behavior be reflective of what I want, but I'm also helping the young people understand how their behavior is impacting their future.
Okay. Allan, thank you for that. That definitely is inspirational. And every time we talk, wow, you definitely, you know, you move people, and that's definitely a blessing. So thank you.
Well, I just want to add this real quick, because with all these amazing people talking, I'm not sure how much chance I'm going to get. So I just want to say this one thing too. When you say that, what moves people is this thing called our spirit, right? And the one thing that's happening that in culture is that we're so focused on the material gain and how we look on the outside that we kind of lose this sense of our spirit, our internal, our soul. And that's something that we really want to make intentional, is teaching and helping young people understand their inner self, their emotional, their spiritual, their mental health. And that has to be very intentional, and it has to be, you know, trained. And so we really want to continue to work with that. And even in the corporate sector, we're finding there are a lot of leaders in society in the corporate who are in the same boat. Like, you know, I get to a point where what am I really striving for and why? And so when you can kind of merge those ideas of just let's not focus on the external gain, but the internal value. And again, that's where these 5 values kind of help us continue to see through that lens. So I just appreciate you bringing that out.
No, thank you. And we'll definitely get back to, you know, expand on the mission of the FISLL project, but thank you. So actually I want to talk a little bit about Grace, your conference last week, because there were so many conversations that were had. The panels were simply amazing. And there's a couple of things that kind of struck me as I was just observing. And Anthony Scaramucci, the panel, that was really, really good. And he talked about there was a shortage of, you know, talent and resources out there in terms of D&I, diversity, inclusion. And then I saw in the chat, Rendell Solomon put something, and it's not just a shortage of talent, but it's a shortage of funding. So I kind of want to turn this over to Grace and Fernando. And maybe we could start with Grace just to expand a little bit upon that. And then Fernando, in terms of what you're doing in terms of D&I. I know Progress last year effectively shut down? And what are you looking to do with the moms, the manager of managers? But Grace, please.
Yeah, and so, that's one of the major challenges we face in the industry in regards to D&I is, last week or so, the CEO and president of Wells Fargo said that the lack of Black employees at the bank was because of limited talent pool. And I think someone had mentioned that on the chat at our conference. And that's simply not the case. I think companies need to look harder for diverse talent. They need to make it more intentional to look for a broader range of talent pool. And then as far as, last week, California just passed a law that requires public companies to have underrepresented people from underrepresented communities to be on the board of these public companies. So California is pushing the envelope in these issues, and it's because companies need to work harder and faster to promote diversity and inclusion within their organization. And I know Fernando is one of the leaders in our industry, and investing in diverse managers is basically one way to help increase that.
Yeah, so first of all, let me say, Allan, I think what you're doing is great because you're getting at the quote unquote the talent much earlier on. I've always been a big believer in that because if you start with them at a younger age, the pipeline is just so much richer when they're so much more mature. They know in their kind of spiritual and headspace what they want to do. Whether it's, finance industry or sports or medicine or whatever it is, having that strong base is great. So I commend you for what you're doing. Near and dear to what we do on a daily basis, yes. So last year, the progress closing was both good news and bad news. Good news in one sense because, all those emerging managers get to pick up lost business, but it was also a loss in one sense because you had a very strong firm that had a very strong footprint in the industry, and to lose those individuals, and all those professionals that were working with emerging managers was such a big loss. And so, what we're looking to do down the road is hopefully, assess what that industry looks like and assess whether we want to re-enter that space with another partner or in a different form. But what Bahiyah is talking about and what she's working on, that's what is kind of exciting for us because that's where the new generation is in the alternative space. You're seeing that next generation of people who are spinning out, starting their own firms, in the traditional space, the domestic equity, international equity, you've got some very big and established players, but in the alternative space, you're seeing some really, really interesting strategies, personalities, thinking. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Bahiyah has to say on that.
Thank you, Fernando. Yeah, that's actually my my next question is yeah. Yeah, maybe you could explain a little bit about working with investment managers in the D&I space, especially the BIPOC community. What does BIPOC stand for, and so on? So, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Paul. Well, there's a lot of different things about our conversation that's so exciting to me. When I think about pipelines of emerging managers, particularly in alternative space, it's really about value chain and supply chain. And so a lot of folks talk about lack of pipeline or talent pipeline, but there's actually a plethora of talent. I think there's a few things that are happening, particularly in the BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, people of color. That's kind of what what the acronym is for. There's typically three kind of feeders for a lot of the financial institutions and kind of fund manager space, and that's SEO, MLT, and of course Twigo Foundation. But what happens is that you know, a lot of those professionals that are taken through the training and education journey from, you know, high school through college and into MBA and beyond, there's not really a training and education or support system beyond there's not really a support system beyond those programs. And so one of the things that we're leading the charge on is creating training and education programs actually for first-time managers, specifically BIPOC and women-led funds in the alternative space to start. And the reason why is that, similar to what Grace was saying about a lot of the major financial institutions, fund of funds, et cetera, speaking about, you know, not a lot of pipeline, it's also toggled or correlated to the 1% to 2% of managers that are in the space that are at those financial institutions. So if that makes sense, it's kind of there's a juggernaut in terms of the pipeline and the education. And so those are things that we need to kind of disrupt and make sure that it's a smooth pathway. And then I wanted to speak to the fund of fund situation. So, you know, in terms of wealth generation and in terms of some of the things that we're seeing in this year of complexity and intensity and kind of civil unrest, it's that there's not a lot of asset managers or asset allocators of color. Right. And so that kind of trickles down to that company level, to the investment managers, whether they're, you know, embedded within the financial institution, or they're trying to spin out and start their own funds. When you have major fund of funds and financial institutions that have that only 1% to 2% of Black or Latinx executives that really have that investment knowledge and that investment expertise, it's then hard for them to spin out into their own fund. And so, you know, VC Include was created to evolve both the conversation of we can't find indie, where are they, and are they best in class, and say, yes, we have them, they are best in class, and we're working with them through the life cycles of their funds, from a fund 1 to a fund 4, from a fund 2 to a fund 5, because we know that institutional investors want to see that track record, want to see that you know, those top quartile, top decile returns. And so that's kind of our business, that's our passion, and that's our mission.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bahiyah. We appreciate that. And we definitely want to expand on that. And, you know, offline, we could talk a little bit about with other allocators, what they're looking to do and how to connect folks. I think that's very, very important. I kind of want to bring it back to Allan. So Allan, I mean, you know, what you said before definitely is moving and inspirational. I kind of want to figure out, I mean, I'm sure the viewers here want to know, like, how can I participate? How can I be part of the FISLL project? I know you have the Huddle Guide, right? You work with a lot of youth in terms of how to equip them, you know, to handle life. Can you expand about the Huddle Guide, FISLL? How can people be part of this?
Well, one of the things that we're launching is kind of a membership platform. We're working with some organizations. We're working with a national men's group, and basically what we do is we kind of have these conversations virtually, since, you know, we are still in this mode of life, but we kind of take them through what, you know, I think he mentioned kind of a life cycle, which I like that term. It's kind of helping, you know, individuals and leaders understand where they are, you know, in their life cycle in terms of how they want to have impact personally and corporately and from a community standpoint. And so we're starting a membership program where we have what we call a Huddle Guide. And the Huddle Guide is just something that a tool that we created just to have people connect and share ideas around how they want to lead, take them through these FISLL values and how they can see it through their lens. And in doing this, we also have a merchandising arm. So one of the things that's actually interesting in this conversation is the MBA. We have a MBA licensed apparel and merchandising partnership with the MBA. And we had a call back in early June, and during a lot of the activity after the murder of George Floyd and things that were happening, the NBA wanted to have a social justice kind of campaign and message. So they came to us and they said, we know that you're Black owned, we know what you're doing in the community, how can we partner with you and you actually make our product? And what we learned from that exercise is that when it comes to groups who want to have impact, one way is to know what your message is and spread that message and have people partner with and adopt your message. So we came up with a kind of a phrase called "Love our game, value our lives," and we partnered with the NBA to create a social justice collection. You can get it on NBA.com if you want to support. But what happens is part of those proceeds are going towards continuing what Bahiyah said, is helping, you know, minority businesses, helping group economics, helping young entrepreneurs who may be first-time owners, but really helping encourage, you know, Black ownership, entrepreneurship, and empowerment in the Black community. And we're partnering with another recipient of those proceeds, or a company. We're starting in Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown. Reunion is a minority, people of color crowdfunding company. And so it's great to know that even through this concept of leadership and social impact, you know, we want to be a true dynamic social impact initiative and brand full circle, to where we're not just saying, hey, here's a way that you can become better and impact the community, but how can you perpetuate it? How can you help other people not lead? We want the leaders in the community to have financial sustainability so that that whole model can be perpetuated. So to answer your question, we just find ways that you want to have impact. What is it that you do? Same way an individual, what is it? What are your strengths? And we can find a way to incorporate, you know, what are your values? What is your impact? Do you want to have an impact through apparel? Do you want to provide an outer expression of what you really want to do? And that's where it was helpful for us to kind of frame a message with the NBA in partnership that we both agreed on. And so now the funding and the application of that message through apparel allows us to perpetuate the message in a cool branding way that's relevant to our young people and relevant to culture. So that's one way that we do it. And it all comes back to helping young people, not just, hey, I like this product, but I like what this product stands for and what it means. And it's helping me identify what that would mean to me.
Okay, great. I mean, I know some of our folks here, our viewers, are definitely going to ask questions in terms of how do we participate. So we definitely want to make that happen. I know it's COVID and we're going to have to do this, you know, evolve and virtually, whatever it may be. But post-COVID, I'm definitely looking forward to a lot of our charity events and just doing good. And basically being a mover and shaker, like what Grace says. But I kind of want to bring it back to Grace. And once again, your conference was amazing. You know, what are your next, you know, your plans? I'm pretty sure you're planning your next inaugural event next year. Hopefully it's live, and I know it's going to be great. But I must say the quality of the folks and the panelists was amazing. But what are next steps in terms of Tide? What are you looking to do? I know you're joining different boards and you're heavily involved in the diversity and inclusion space, but what's next here, Grace?
Well, so this year, our whole plan was just to have the conference. We wanted to make sure it was done well and correctly. And so now that's done, throughout our conversations this year, a lot of endowments and foundations that are beginning to look into D&I are coming to us and asking, where do we go to for this, you know, to start a program? And so while there are a lot of resources out there where, you know, there's a due diligence questionnaire or, you know, there's a report here and there, there's really no playbook. And kind of like the FISLL guide, we're thinking of creating the diversity playbook. And we're in talks with a few consulting firms to develop that. So that's something exciting. We're also talking to different partners that's outside of investments, but believe in D&I. So that's going to be really cool. So stay tuned for that. And as Allan mentioned about branding, Tide has gotten a lot of, I guess it's not about just the mission, but how they feel as being part of the network. And I think we were able to curate, like as I mentioned, you know, like people like Fernando and yourself that really care about the cause. And so it's a community. We've been able to create a community. And so people are asking, hey, can we get swags and, you know, shirts? And so we're thinking about a lot of different things to make diversity and inclusion cool and part of the lifestyle. So that's what we have going on for next year.
Okay, I definitely see a big collaboration amongst all of us and our networks to promote D&I. Fernando, any last words of enlightenment you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting time, no doubt, and I think, you know, what's the quote? You know, when the sun is shining, make hay, right? So this is a good time for people to really take advantage of the fact that people who were not maybe aware before are now maybe a little bit more aware, and so try to take advantage of that. And again, as I mentioned previously, in Illinois, we've been at this for a long time. We're always trying to move the needle or move the ball forward. You know, the analogy for a lot of business is the innings, right? Well, the innings means you're only moving forward. Problem is, in diversity and inclusion, it could go backwards in our you know, so you know, I think one of your questions was, you know, has it moved the needle? It has, but, you know, are you starting at the, you know, the midway point, or are you starting at your own red zone, right? You could get scored on in your safety if you move backwards. So we're always trying to move forward, but recognizing where we're at. And there's always a healthy dialogue here in Illinois. Where are we at, and how do we move it? So if we're already at a strong level, how do we make it even stronger? But if you're at a weak level, how do you really make an impact, right? So impact is a very strong word that we throw around here, because you can spread out, you know, let's say you have $100 million to give out or to allocate, and you spread it out, you know, over 20 managers, that's only $5 million. But if you park that, let's say, with 1 or 2 managers, that can really, really make an impact and really, really get the business rolling for that institution or that manager. So we're always conscious of that, and always trying to move the ball forward rather than have it move back on us, because, you know, I don't want to get political, but it's been a different environment over the past 4 years, and I feel like things have moved backward in some sense.
Okay. Thank you for that. Bahiyah?
So interesting. Sure. I mean, I think it is about, in this day and time and zeitgeist, it's about positive impact and moving forward. Really excited to be in this conversation, because there's a lot of different touch points from pipeline and talent and development, both from, you know, the goal perspective, but also the internal perspective. What are we really doing? What are our values? How are our investments aligning with our values? But also from an institutional perspective, you know, how do you invest for the long term, right? Like, how do you invest for the next decade, 2 decades, in a way that actually moves the needle? And then again, from Grace's perspective, you know, in terms of making sure that it's not just about the investments, but it's also about you know, having not just a brand, but an ecosystem. I think we're all ecosystem builders that drives this goal of increased diversity across asset class in, you know, the best in class managers that happen to be diverse managers. And so I think it's about this positive impact. I mean, that's where we are. I think that's where, you know, the nation and the world is trying to figure out, is how can we do well and do good? How can we marry financial returns with positive social impact and, you know, environmental and social governance? How can all of that work for the good of humanity?
Thank you, Bahiyah. And Allan, and as we close, I don't know if you want to mention any ideas of like who the New York Knicks is going to be drafting next month, or you're probably not allowed to talk about it, but
yeah, I don't know if I can record. We can record this.
You know, I can tell you on the side as soon as I know.
Okay.
I'm just I'm appreciative of the conversation. You know, the one thing that I'm kind of getting from the conversation is that the impact is really based on relationship, you know, and everything that connects the dots here is that relationship. You know, even what you said here about how do we build a long-term future and trust in that, and a lot of that what happens is the relationship that are formed. And so that's the powerful thing. Like, I'm just really looking forward to extending that. I think in the FISLL process, we kind of talk about going from awareness to understanding to implementation. And that process of becoming aware of what needs to happen, what are our values, again, what are we trying to accomplish, to now we have an basic understanding of these concepts, and now we can implement. And so I'm just excited. You know, we have an alignment with the Chicago Public School System, so I'd love to, you know, connect with you at some point on that. And there's just a lot that I'd love to learn more of. And thanks again, Paul, you know, for always bringing like these conversations together that are so valuable.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Grace, any last few words?
I just wanted to say thank you to the panelists and to you, Paul, for bringing us together. At the end of the day, I think, you know, Allan's right. It's the relationships that we built within the industry that enable us to promote the causes that we believe in. And so cheers to that.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers. Bahiyah, Grace, Fernando, Allan, on behalf of the StoneX group, our StoneX Prime Brokerage and Cap Intro, we just want to personally thank you, you know, spending a little time with us today to talk about a very, very important topic of social impact and diversity and inclusion. And we look forward to doing this again sometime. But thank you, and everyone have a great day.